A pearl that leapt from a brooch to an iconic tiara only to return. An emperor's magnificent gift meant for one royal hand, yet embarking on an unexpected, almost rebellious journey before finding its place within the British crown. No, this isn't fiction. These are the true, often astonishing histories of Queen Elizabeth II's pearl brooches. This June, as we honor the pearl, forget simple royal adornments. We're uncovering the human dramas, the tangled inheritances, and the audacious redesigns hidden within these legendary jewels. Ready to see how these heirlooms witnessed a century of not just splendor, but of raw passion and closely guarded secrets? Stay with me. The real stories behind these pearls will change how you see royal jewelry forever. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. All right, let's dive into our first magnificent piece. Queen Victoria's Pearl and Diamond Brooch, a jewel that truly sets the stage for understanding the royal collection. The writer Leslie Field described it as a grand diamond-shaped design, brimming with diamonds, 8 lovely pearls nestled within, and 3 more pearl drops dangling below. A true statement piece. You can just picture the light it caught. Now, Queen Victoria didn't just enjoy wearing this brooch, she specifically designated it an heirloom of the crown. This meant it was formally set aside for future queens and consorts, part of the monarchy's enduring heritage. And it certainly found an appreciative wearer in Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. She apparently wore it a great deal in the 1950s. Then, curiously, it seems to have been kept from public view for some years before she brought it out again later in life. Charming photographs show her wearing it at the Chelsea Flower Show in 2001, always with timeless elegance. After the Queen Mother passed away in 2002, this historic and cherished brooch came to her daughter, Queen Elizabeth II, who chose it for notable occasions. Many might remember it from her Christmas broadcasts in 2009 and 2016. Beyond festive events, she selected it for a poignant service at St. Paul's Cathedral in March 2015, honoring troops stationed in Afghanistan. A piece so steeped in history feels fitting for such moments. This concept of heirlooms of the crown is a thread we'll revisit, a tradition Queen Victoria held dear, but not every piece begins its royal journey so clearly designated. Okay, so following on from that first beautiful piece from Queen Victoria, we encounter another of her brooches, also designated as an heirloom of the crown, but with a slightly different origin story. This one is Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee brooch. Now, if you can imagine the celebrations for her Diamond Jubilee in 1897, a truly momentous occasion marking 60 years on the throne, this brooch was actually a gift to her from the members of her royal household. Made by Garrard in 1897, it's quite intricate. Hugh Roberts describes its scrolled and pierced foliate design, delicate leafy swirls, pave set with diamonds. At its heart is a beautiful pearl, with more diamonds and a detachable loop suspending a pearl drop. Queen Victoria herself wore it for a state dinner during those Jubilee festivities, which must have been quite a sight. True to her habit with significant pieces, she designated this one as an heirloom of the crown too, so it passed from monarch to monarch, through Queen Alexandra, and then to Queen Mary. But the royal lady who seems to have become particularly attached to it was Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, who we came to know and love as Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother. After her husband, King George VI, came to the throne in 1936, this brooch apparently became one of her absolute favorites. Hugh Roberts even notes that she wore it more often than any of her other brooches. That's quite a statement, given the collection she had. She chose it for important family events in her daughter's life, including Princess Elizabeth's engagement portraits and her 1947 wedding. The Queen Mother wore it frequently for the next half-century, looking stylish even for her 99th and 101st birthday celebrations. After the Queen Mother passed away in 2002, the brooch then came into Queen Elizabeth II's active collection, and she was seen wearing it on a number of occasions, sometimes choosing to wear it without the detachable pearl drop for daytime events. Speaking of gifts, wedding presents often form a cornerstone of these collections. This next piece takes us to 1862 and a wedding gift for a future queen consort, Queen Alexandra. When she was Princess Alexandra of Denmark, about to marry the future King Edward VII, then Prince of Wales, he commissioned a spectacular suite of jewels for her, a parure, as the grand sets are called. This magnificent set, made by Gerard, included a tiara, a necklace, a pair of earrings, and the brooch we're interested in today. The brooch itself is a beautiful example of its time, featuring these lovely button-style pearl and diamond clusters, and from it hang these very elegant pear-shaped pearl pendants. Alexandra actually wore the necklace, earrings, and this brooch on her wedding day in 1863. Intriguingly, though made as a set, the all-diamond tiara's design differed from the pearl and diamond jewels. Perhaps because of this, Alexandra often wore the pieces separately, enhancing versatility. After Queen Alexandra, these wedding jewels, with the exception of the tiara, passed to Queen Mary, who was such a connoisseur and historian of royal gems. And then, upon Queen Mary's death in 1953, the brooch and the matching earrings came directly to Queen Elizabeth II. The necklace from the parure also eventually came to Queen Elizabeth II, inherited from her mother in 2002, and has more recently been seen on Catherine, the Princess of Wales, which is a lovely link to the present day. Queen Elizabeth II herself seemed to wear this particular wedding gift brooch more frequently in her later years, and often for evening occasions, where its classic pearl and diamond elegance would have truly shone. This brings us to another brooch with a fascinating lineage, the Duchess of Cambridge's brooch. When we hear Duchess of Cambridge today, many think of Catherine, our current Princess of Wales, but this brooch takes us back much further, to a 19th century predecessor, Princess Augusta of Hesse Castle. It's thought to have been made, probably by Gerard, before 1877, as an elderly Duchess Augusta was painted wearing it in a portrait commissioned by her niece, Queen Victoria, that year. From Augusta, the brooch passed to her younger daughter, Princess Mary Adelaide, Duchess of Teck, who, as you might remember, was Queen Mary's mother. So, the family connection continues. Then, after Mary Adelaide's death in 1897, the brooch was inherited by her only daughter, the future Queen Mary. And Queen Mary, with her great love for historic jewels, certainly wore it. There are photographs of her wearing it for many events and portraits throughout her life, including, very touchingly, at the christening of her great-grandson, the future King Charles, in 1948. As with many of Queen Mary's treasures, Queen Elizabeth II inherited this brooch upon her grandmother's death in 1953. From the 1970s onwards, it became a real favorite, worn for a huge variety of events, with or without the pearl pendant. It truly became one of her signature pieces in her later reign. And then, in a really wonderful full-circle moment, the current Princess of Wales, Catherine, wore this very historic Duchess of Cambridge's brooch for her first official joint portrait with Prince William, unveiled in 2022. She herself chose the brooch, reflecting its connection to Cambridgeshire and their roles. It's quite something to see these pieces with all their history continuing to be worn and appreciated by a new generation, isn't it? It really underscores that sense of living history these jewels represent. Now, let's turn our attention to two royal ladies who were absolutely pivotal in shaping the collection that Queen Elizabeth II eventually inherited. The formidable Queen Mary, with her incredible eye for jewelry and history, and her daughter-in-law, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, whose warmth and style charmed the nation. Their legacies are deeply interwoven with so many of the pearl brooches we're exploring. And what a piece to start with from Queen Mary's collection, the Richmond brooch. This wasn't just any jewel, it was a wedding present to Princess May of Teck, who would, of course, become Queen Mary when she married the future King George V in 1893. The gift came from the town of Richmond, which was a lovely personal touch because Mary's family, the Tecks, had lived at White Lodge in Richmond Park for over 20 years. So even though her father's family was German, she really was, in many ways, a local girl in that English town. Crafted by Hunt and Roskell, this stunning creation features a scroll design laden with diamonds, a large luminous round pearl at its heart, and a detachable pear-shaped pearl drop. This versatility Queen Mary clearly appreciated. One of the most fascinating little tidbits about this brooch is that for a number of years, that very pearl pendant was actually separated from the brooch and used on one of Queen Mary's most iconic tiaras, the Lover's Knot tiara, the one we later saw so often on Princess Diana, and now on Catherine, Princess of Wales. Eventually, though, when the upright pearls were removed from that tiara, the pendant was returned to the Richmond brooch, restoring it to its original design. Queen Mary clearly treasured it. She was photographed wearing it as early as her honeymoon, and then in a rather famous portrait from the Devonshire House Ball in 1897, you can actually spot the Richmond brooch being used as a pendant on her pearl necklace. She was so inventive. Upon Queen Mary's death in 1953, this significant brooch was among the jewels inherited by her granddaughter, Queen Elizabeth II, and it certainly became a piece that Her Majesty wore with great meaning. We saw it fairly regularly, both with and without its pearl drop, often for occasions of remembrance, like the annual Festival of Remembrance at the Royal Albert Hall. But perhaps its most high-profile appearances in recent memory, and the ones that really touched many hearts, were when the Queen wore it to the wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle in 2018. A truly joyful occasion. And then, in a moment of profound personal and national sorrow, she chose the Richmond brooch for the funeral of her beloved husband, Prince Philip, in 2021. That same wedding year of 1893 was a bumper one for jewelry for Princess May of Teck. Alongside the Richmond brooch, she received the Kensington bow brooch from the people of Kensington, another appropriate gift, as the future Queen Mary was born and spent much of her childhood at Kensington Palace. Made by Collingwood, it's a classic diamond bow, a motif Queen Elizabeth II favored, with an elegant pear-shaped pearl pendant. It's a design that's both grand and exquisitely feminine. The new Duchess of York, as Mary then was, began wearing it almost immediately. One of its prominent early appearances was, like the Richmond brooch, at that famous Devonshire House Ball in 1897. Mary dressed as a lady from the court of Marguerite de Valois, and she was absolutely laden with jewels as part of her costume. If you look closely at photos from that event, you'll spot the Kensington bow brooch right in the middle of her bodice. She also wore it in a 1905 formal portrait and significantly in her 1911 coronation portraits. When Queen Mary died in 1953, she bequeathed this brooch, along with most of the rest of her vast jewelry collection, to her granddaughter, Queen Elizabeth II. And Queen Elizabeth wore it throughout her reign, for both daytime and evening engagements. And, much like the Richmond brooch, its all-white diamond and pearl composition made it suitable for occasions of mourning and remembrance, too. Poignantly, in the spring of 2002, she chose the Kensington bow brooch for the state funeral of her late mother, Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother. The stories of how these jewels arrive in the royal collection are often just as fascinating as the pieces themselves. And the next one, the Teck Emperor of Austria brooch, has a particularly intriguing continental connection and a rather winding path to Queen Mary and eventually to Queen Elizabeth II. This brooch originally belonged to Queen Mary's mother, Princess Mary Adelaide, Duchess of Teck. It was given to Mary Adelaide way back in 1870 by a truly significant royal figure of the 19th century, Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria-Hungary. The occasion? He had served as a godfather to Mary Adelaide's third child, Prince Francis of Teck. It's quite a link, isn't it? Emperor Franz Joseph, godfather to a Teck prince. The connection likely came about because baby Francis's father, Prince Francis, Duke of Teck, had been educated at an Austrian military academy and had served with the Imperial Austrian Army. Hugh Roberts describes it as a plated circle with pearl center and 12 brilliants, suspending a collet chain and 3 detachable Baroque pearl pendants. It's a very distinguished-looking piece, and rather unusually, it seems some early sketches by the Viennese court jeweler A.E. Kochert around that time bear a resemblance to it. What's also interesting is that the brooch can be worn without the pendants and chain, giving it a slightly different look. Now, the inheritance of this piece is where the story takes a few turns. It seems it was inherited by Prince Francis, Frank, from his mother. But Frank, by all accounts, was quite the character, an incorrigible gambler. When his will was eventually unsealed, much later, in 2024, according to one source, it was confirmed that he bequeathed the brooch not directly within the royal family, but to his mistress, a Lady Kilmorey. While Queen Mary did manage to purchase back most of the jewels Frank left to Lady Kilmorey, this brooch was not among them initially. As per Frank's wishes, Nellie Kilmorey kept the brooch for her lifetime. Then she bequeathed it to Princess Victoria, who was King Edward VII's daughter and King George V's sister. Somehow, after Princess Victoria inherited it, the brooch made its way back into Queen Mary's collection. Quite the journey. Queen Elizabeth II then inherited it from Queen Mary in 1953, and it had some lovely early appearances in her reign. An important one came in 1964, when she wore it for the first official photographs of her fourth child, Prince Edward, taken by Cecil Beaton. She often chose it for appropriately grand occasions, like state banquets, sometimes wearing it with its pendants, sometimes without. It's a piece that really speaks of that old-world imperial grandeur. From imperial gifts and complex inheritances, we turn to a brooch that came to the royal family as a mark of profound admiration from a loyal subject. This is the beautiful Courtauld-Thompson scallop shell brooch, often just called the Queen Mother's shell brooch. This exquisite piece was made in 1919 in London by the Goldsmiths and Silversmiths Company, Limited. It was designed in part by a Sir Courtauld Thompson, who was the son of a famous Scottish inventor. Sir Courtauld apparently gave the brooch to his sister, a writer named Winifred Hope Thompson. And it was Winifred who, upon her passing in 1944, left this spectacular jewel to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. The bequest was made, according to Hugh Roberts, as a mark of respect and profound admiration, and Winifred also indicated that she wanted it to be a brooch that was passed from queen to queen in Britain. Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, clearly adored it. It became a real favorite, and she wore it regularly over the decades. Most notably, perhaps, she chose to wear it for her 100th birthday celebrations in August 2000, a testament to how much she valued it. When the Queen Mother died 2 years later, in 2002, the brooch was inherited by her daughter, Queen Elizabeth II, in keeping with Winifred Thompson's wishes, and Her Majesty wore it on numerous occasions over the 2 decades it was in her collection. She chose it for the wedding of her granddaughter, Zara Phillips, in 2011 for Royal Ascot, and very fittingly, for events related to her mother, like a memorial service and the unveiling of the Queen Mother's statue on the Mall. She even wore it for her annual Christmas speech in 2020. After Queen Elizabeth II's passing in 2022, the Courtauld-Thompson scallop shell brooch would have passed to her son, King Charles III. His wife, Queen Camilla, subsequently wore this historic piece, debuting it at Royal Ascot in June 2023. And now, we come to a name that resonates with anyone interested in royal jewelry: Greville. Specifically, the Greville scroll brooch. This is one of the many, many magnificent jewels that came to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, from Dame Margaret Greville, a very wealthy society hostess and a close friend of royalty. Mrs. Greville bequeathed her entire, quite staggering jewelry collection to the Queen Mother upon her death in 1942. This particular brooch, a delicate scroll design featuring diamonds and pearls, was made in 1929 by the legendary House of Cartier. What's particularly interesting is that Mrs. Greville apparently used gems from her own personal collection, pearls and diamonds already imbued with her own history. The design itself is a fascinating blend, hinting at the transition between the flowing, organic forms of Art Nouveau and the bolder, geometric lines of the emerging Art Deco style. The Queen Mother wore the Greville scroll brooch throughout her life, often for a range of different occasions. She was known for pinning brooches to her hats, and the size of this one made it rather ideal for that, but she also wore it for more formal gala occasions. Queen Elizabeth II inherited the Greville scroll brooch from her mother in 2002. One of her earliest appearances in it came during her tour of Australia in October 2011. Since then, Her Majesty primarily wore it for more low-profile moments, like audiences at Buckingham Palace. However, One of its more prominent appearances in recent years was in March 2016, when she wore it to open a new exhibition and breeding center for lions at the London Zoo. So we've explored historic pearl brooches with grand provenances. But not every royal jewel comes with a fully documented history. Some carry a delightful air of mystery. Let's start with one that appeared a little later in her reign, a lovely pearl and diamond brooch that was first photographed being worn by the Queen in 1974. This particular piece features a rather prominent large pearl, which is beautifully accented by what's described as a floral spray, all set with sparkling diamonds. It sounds quite classic in its design, doesn't it? For about a decade after 1974, it occasionally appeared, often at informal events like polo prize presentations or the Royal Windsor Horse Show. But here's the intriguing part. Its actual provenance, where it came from or who designed it, remains unknown to the public. And interestingly, it wasn't a piece that Queen Elizabeth wore very often in the later years of her reign. As with many of her personal jewels, it's now presumed to have been inherited by her son, King Charles. And that sense of the unknown, or at least the not fully documented, continues with our next piece, the pearl trefoil brooch. This is one of those brooches that truly became a workhorse in Queen Elizabeth II's collection, seen on countless occasions, yet its precise origins are also a bit hazy. It seems to have entered her collection sometime in the 1980s, as that's when she began wearing it publicly. It became a real staple for Her Majesty, especially for her daytime engagements. You'd see it pinned to so many different coats and dresses over the years, a familiar and very pretty piece. It's a good reminder that sometimes a jewel is simply cherished for its beauty and its ability to complement an outfit perfectly, even if its full backstory isn't widely known, don't you think? Then we have a brooch that is truly unique in its design, and again, one whose early history isn't entirely clear, the pearl triangle brooch. This one is quite distinctive. Leslie Field describes it as an unusual, long, narrow diamond triangle with two pearls and a canary yellow diamond set in the middle. That canary yellow diamond is a particularly interesting and rather unexpected touch, isn't it? It's not a feature you see every day in these classic royal pearl pieces, and it adds a very subtle warmth. The overall geometric lines of the brooch have led some to suggest that it might date from the early 20th century, perhaps with an Art Deco influence. But as with the trefoil brooch, we don't have confirmation of its maker, or exactly when it was created, or even how it arrived in the Queen's extensive jewelry box. Despite the mystery surrounding its origins, Queen Elizabeth II wore it with a remarkable variety of outfits, across nearly every color of the rainbow. It was clearly very versatile. But perhaps its most memorable, and indeed most poignant public appearance was when she wore it to address the nation on the eve of the funeral of Diana, Princess of Wales, in September 1997. In that moment of immense national grief and reflection, the familiar sight of the Queen wearing this distinct brooch played a part in that very somber and historic address to her people. And finally, in this group of pearl brooches with more enigmatic pasts, we have a really lovely one known as the Queen's Diamond and Pearl Leaf Brooch. This delicate design features a trio of pearls nestled in the center of a leaf, which is entirely pave set with diamonds, giving it a wonderful sparkle. We don't have definite provenance information for this particular brooch, and to some eyes it looks like it could be a fairly recent, more modern creation. One of Her Majesty's most notable outings in this piece was actually on her 73rd birthday in April 1999, when she wore it at a special concert in Seoul during her state visit to South Korea. This timing has led to some gentle speculation, and it is just speculation as far as we know, that perhaps it was a thoughtful birthday gift she received on that trip. What's lovely is that Queen Elizabeth II loaned this brooch to Catherine, Princess of Wales, who wore it for the Passchendaele Centenary in Ypres in 2017 and the 2018 Festival of Remembrance. There's a theory among royal jewelry watchers that its elements might be detachable, as Catherine wore similar-looking earrings in 2023. It's always so special to see these pieces being worn by a new generation of royalty, whether their full history is known or not. They create new memories and gracefully continue the story of royal adornment. From imperial gifts with winding histories to wedding presents steeped in affection, and even those delightful mysteries whose origins are yet to be fully uncovered, each pearl brooch has offered us a unique window into royal life. I hope you've enjoyed this glimpse into the pearl treasury of Queen Elizabeth II. Thank you so much for joining me on this sparkling journey. I'd love to hear which brooch or story particularly caught your imagination, so do let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe for more explorations into the fascinating world of royal history and jewels. Until next time.